Hi guys, I'm Ksenia. Welcome to my channel St. Petersburg Me, and today we will be talking about Chernobyl mini-series by HBO. This catastrophe affected my family and I made a special video about it. So if you want to know about the story of my family regarding the Chernobyl disaster, please use this link here or here. HBO's Chernobyl has beaten HBO's record in viewership, leaving Game of Thrones behind. That means that Chernobyl miniseries is more popular than GOT. And why is that? To my opinion, that is because Chernobyl is the story of real people. Real people and their lives stand behind this script, this story that was shown in the miniseries, and that is what's draw attention to this miniseries. Except the storylines of real people who took part in cleanup after the explosion, I was massively impressed by the creator's eye for detail. So all those accessories and items of Soviet life, such as pieces of furniture, rugs, telephones, clocks, uniforms, clothes, and even hairdos, are shown extremely neat and precise. By the way, my mom has the same rug somewhere in her garage. The print is different, but it's a funny thing. But still, there are some issues with some of the Soviet realities and facts about the Chernobyl disaster. Here are 9 flaws in Chernobyl miniseries. Russian names. Guys, we do have short names and we use them to address each other when we communicate. In Chernobyl mini-series, they use short names, but it happens occasionally and in the wrong situations. Here is the list of Russian names and their short variants from the Chernobyl mini-series, and you can look up crates of vodka for the liquidators. Guys, it's not true. First of all, starting from 1985, the law prohibiting selling and drinking alcoholic drinks was in force in the USSR, and crates of vodka delivered officially to the cleanup site, not possible. It just couldn't be like that. If the workers wanted to have a drink, they had to go to the nearest village that was out of the exclusion zone and buy their homemade vodka that is called samagon, and they did that, but they did that very rarely, and they didn't drink as much as it is shown in the Chernobyl miniseries. Evacuation. Many people blame the authorities for the delay of the evacuation shown in this document. The idea of evacuation was rejected at first because the authorities didn't have correct information on the radiation level, but they began to drive the transport to the disaster area on the same day, and this was made to prevent wasting time in case the evacuation would have been announced by 2 a.m. on April the 27th. 1,200 buses and 360 trucks were prepared to evacuate 49,000 citizens of Pripyat. Can you imagine that? 1,200 buses were driven to the disaster area in just 10 hours. It's absolutely insane. I mean, that was 1986, not now, not the present year. They didn't have these apps that we are having now. They didn't have internet or even cell phones. That is absolutely insane. So at 7 a.m. on April the 27th, the evacuation was announced, and 1,200 buses and 360 trucks and two trains were prepared, were ready to evacuate the town. And the evacuation began at 2 p.m. And lasted for 2.5 hours, and at 4:30 p.m. on April the 27th, Pripyat was absolutely abandoned. It was completely empty. So I don't think it's quite appropriate to blame authorities for the evacuation. Academic Legasov's apartment. In episode 1, HBO showed Legasov's apartment, and it looked old, rusty and shabby. And guys, scientists and academics were highly appreciated by the Soviet state, and they had the best salaries, the best apartments and summer houses and other charms of Soviet life. So academic Legasov living in such an apartment is nonsense. It's not true. Paint peeling off in hospitals. So guys, Pripyat was a young town, and its massive development began in late 70s, and it was a commuter town for the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And the station, the plant itself, was a piece of Soviet pride. So all the facilities and infrastructure in Pripyat couldn't grow old just in 7 years. It's not possible. It was maintained properly at that time. What's shown in HBO series, all those rusty central heating radiators, worn out window framing, and paint peeling off in hospitals are typical for the mid and late 90s, when nobody cared about the condition of facilities and infrastructure after the Soviet Union collapsed. But in 80s, all those things looked quite good and were maintained properly. Minister of Coal Industry guarded by armed soldiers. So this storyline is a complete fiction, and let me explain why. Minister Shadov began working as a miner since he was 15. Later, he got a special education, and after the series of promotions, he became a minister, and he was a professional in mining and a talented manager. And every Soviet miner knew him and had respect for him. So the behavior towards him shown in this episode is totally inappropriate, and miners didn't do that. It's true that Shadov came to the miners to ask for their help in Chernobyl, but he didn't need armed soldiers ready to shoot to ask for help. And that's a complete fiction. In 1986, Minister Shadov was 59 years old, and he went to the Chernobyl disaster area together with the miners and managed the mining operation. So miners went to Chernobyl on their free will. And why did they do that? So Soviet people were raised in a patriotic atmosphere and total love for their country. The concept of honor was one of the main concepts in the Soviet Union, and the state raised true heroes ready to risk their life for people and for their state. It was considered mean and despicable to stay aside from the tragedy of any kind and leaving people with no help. Armed soldiers guarding the power plant. Guys, what do you think they were doing there? Standing by the walls, guarding the workers of the plant, or spying for KGB? What? It's ridiculous. They were guarding the power plant, but their security posts were located along the perimeter of the power plant. They were guarding the area to prevent trespassing. So armed soldiers on the power plant, in the power plant, it's not true. Helicopter crash. It really occurred in real life, but 6 months later, on October the 2nd, 1986. Helicopters were dropping glue on the roof of the power plant to prevent radioactive dust from spreading all over the area, and it was the sun was getting down, and it was blinding, and one of the pilots didn't notice the rope of the crane and flew over it and crashed. Julianna. This character is absolutely fictional as long as everything that happens to her in the show. Her character represents all the scientists who were helping Legasov. And by the way, KGB agents in libraries? Like, seriously, guys? That's ridiculous. So guys, these were some of the flaws that I found in Chernobyl miniseries, and there are actually many more, but I've chosen only these ones. And thank you for watching. See you in my next videos. Bye.